Hello and welcome to the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. Great to have everyone back after the holiday hiatus that we just took. I'm your host, Brett Bivens, and with me today is David Drake, the founder and chairman of LDJ Capital in New York City. David has a ton of professional experience that really spans numerous industries, both finance related and otherwise. And so, we'll really kind of dig into all that and kind of what he's working on now throughout the course of the show. David, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Brett, to have me. I'm excited about being able to be part of this.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you as well. So I gave kind of a minor introduction there about what you do, but not too in depth. So maybe to start us off, can you give us a little bit more detailed background of your your career trajectory and where you've been?
Well, for the last 10 years, my venture capital firm, LDJ Capital, has been making investments in early and late stage private companies. And we also have an advisory division in private equity funds and fund of funds, both domestically and internationally. But one of the investment we made that we're going to be discussing today is into the Soho Loft capital creation series, where we, for the last year, have had event educating the population, the decision makers, the institutional investors, the broker-dealers included, as well as the legal and accounting professionals, but also the entrepreneurs and the crowdfunding startups out there on how we need to fix the broken market where financing for private companies are not in place as it used to be. And not only do we have to identify what the problems have been, we have to find solutions to it. So we're doing one of our events that's going to be on crowdfunding. And, part of what we want to do at the Soho Loft capital creation is to make sure, A, that we educate and show what kind of infrastructure is needed in the new private company marketplace is evolving. And really, we need to define what's the private company marketplace and what's really going on. In layman terms, in 2008, when the crisis happened, the first thing that happened that startups noticed was banks suddenly said, we're not giving any loans to anybody. And suddenly early stage and startups had problems getting loans from the bank. Same time, a lot of the debt funds disappeared. So all the financing that was available dried up really quickly. There was almost 2,700 VCs at that time that put money into startups. I'd say a good 2,300 of them ended or died or could not get any more LPs invested. So suddenly all the resources for financing for early stage and startups disappeared, overnight. And today we need to create new jobs in the US. And how do you do that? Well, you need to make it easier for people to get a loan to grow their business, because this early stage high growth companies are the ones who are going to be hiring more people. So our argument is, look, what's broken? How do we fix it? What's needed to be done to create a new marketplace? And we're not talking about replacing the IPO market. We're talking about creating a new place where people can buy and sell shares that they already own. Right now, SEC is making it too complicated and too difficult to do that. And obviously, the biggest success story is Facebook. But there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of smaller companies and startups. And specifically in crowdfunding, how do you get that financing to them to get them started? So the second thing the Soho Loft wants to do is, also advise the companies how they would fit into this new marketplace and who are the online game players that they could use as a service. There's several of them, from Expert Financial to the most famous one, Second Market, to Gate Technologies and Shares Post. But what's the difference? How do you kind of navigate between them? And that's the second part of TSL, to advise and supply IR services for private companies growing quickly. And of course, the third one is to bridge and build that infrastructure between broker-dealers, institutions, startups, seed funders, investors, CEOs, lawyers, accountants, and kind of show them how it all can be done from the beginning to the end. And obviously, crowdfunding to us is the beginning. And there are a couple of bills in the House that passed that we're very excited about. And to maybe talk a little more about that, we are excited because on January 23rd, we have Congressman Patrick McHenry presenting for us, and he's the brainchild behind the crowdfunding bill, so we call it. It's actually the Entrepreneur Access to Capital Act, number 2930, was passed about 2 months ago. And everybody got really excited because what it really does in layman term is SEC says you can't solicit the general population. This one would say if you are a crowdfunding organization, you should get an exemption so you can solicit the general population and allow you to get people to put money into your company so you can own equity in a smaller startup. That's really in general terms the big deal there. Now, there's been other bills. Now the Senate has to vote on it, and if the Senate votes on it, then it's enacted into law. But the Senate is coming up with their own bill, so it's a little convoluted what's happening because other senators are coming up with their own versions of the bill. And, we're going to get a nice, beautiful update from Patrick McHenry himself, we find as the originator of the original bill for crowdfunding on January 23rd.
Right.
Now, I think that gives you a nice little overview, Brett, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Great overview. And so I think that gives us a phenomenal overview of kind of what the Soho Loft focuses on. Obviously, a great organization for LDJ to be investing in and to be a partner with. One thing I want to touch on is, you brought up the fact that crowdfunding will, eventually help create more liquidity in a market that has seemingly dried up. I mean, it's a little bit better now than it was 3 years ago when we hit the financial crisis. But how will this liquidity that's created by this kind of new capital system that we've been discussing help create jobs here in America?
Well, the argument is that, when the crisis started, the banks closed their doors, the VCs fell apart, and a lot less were around. I mean, literally 2,300 VCs were kind of not in the market anymore. They were either at the end of their cycle as a VC, or they've lost money with the LPs. The investors will never invest again. So the question is, how do we get more money or easier money to startups? Since you don't have the traditional routes, and angels are being, flooded with opportunities right now because they're like the next step for people to go to get money from. So the crowdfunding bill and how that applies to getting more jobs. I'll give you an example. You have a young company. The company needs to buy a truck. The truck is going to cost them $30,000. They don't have that capital available because they have to pay salaries, they have fees and rent and other charges in their business plan. So buying that truck becomes difficult. So now they need to be able to raise money, lend money, but nobody's lending. So they need to raise money to get enough money to buy the truck, and buying the truck would involve hiring 5 more people. And that's exactly what we're talking about, allowing capital for a company that's growing. Easier access. The crowdfunding bill would allow startups to instead be able to say, look, give me $100, give me $1,000, give me $10,000, and this is what I'm going to do with it. The challenge now is the SEC says that that's not allowed. You're not allowed to solicit for investors to invest in your company in a grand scale. And there are exemptions you have applied to, but all these exemptions are costing a lot of money. I mean, SEC requires that you do quarterly reports and annual reports. And in 2002, Bush put through the Sarbanes-Oxley, which included even more compliance costs for companies that got bigger. Even though that's in the IPO market and not in this space, it all falls together that by adding more capital, that's easier achievable by startups.
Yeah, and
they can spend the money.
Yeah, that's something that's always really baffled me. All the regulations and the restrictions that the SEC, puts in place. The fact that, an individual can go out and, it seems like a lot of their rules are meant to protect the non-sophisticated investor, but at the same time, I mean, any non-sophisticated investor can go put all their money into any company that's, public and in the stock market. And, we've seen how the stock market reacts and how it's volatile. I mean, that's not by any means a safe investment either. So the fact that, this is kind of in process and just allowing a whole whole new range of options for